The Jarima Gospels in Ethiopia are believed to be the oldest illustrated Christian manuscripts. Scholars previously dated the manuscripts to around 1100 AD. Something dark is about to happen, and the warning was written thousands of years ago. The Ethiopian Bible is famous for its unique books, but a hidden passage is currently sending shockwaves through the research world. It describes a cosmic visitor that arrives in a lightless chariot every 12,068 years. This isn't a myth, it is a schedule. Every time this cycle completes, the Earth faces a cataclysm that wipes the slate clean. We have found the connection between these ancient verses and the modern extinction cycles that have experts worried. Stay tuned, because the final piece of this puzzle is chilling. Calendar of the Cosmic Reset. The Ethiopian Bible is not like the one you might have sitting on your nightstand. It is much older, much larger, and frankly, a lot more mysterious. While the standard Bible used in the United States and Europe has 66 books, the Ethiopian version contains 81. This is a huge deal because it means they kept records that the rest of the world tried to throw away or hide. For centuries, monks in the mountains of East Africa have protected these texts, claiming they hold the true history of our planet and its relationship with the stars. The most fascinating part of this collection is the mention of a cosmic visitor. The text describes this visitor as arriving in a lightless chariot from heaven. Now, when we think of a chariot, we usually think of horses and wheels, but in ancient languages, this was often the only way to describe a craft or a vehicle moving through the sky. The fact that it is called lightless is even more interesting. It suggests something that doesn't glow like a star or a comet, but something dark, massive, and perhaps even artificial. According to these hidden passages, this visitor doesn't just pass by. It arrives on a very specific schedule of every 12,068 years. This number is incredibly precise. In the world of ancient prophecy, numbers are rarely accidental. When you look at the history of the Earth, things get even weirder. This exact time frame keeps popping up in geological studies. We see massive shifts in the climate and the sudden disappearance of entire species roughly every 12,000 years. It's like the Earth has a reset button, and this lightless chariot is the finger that presses it. But why was this kept out of the Western Bible? Many scholars believe that the early leaders of the church in Rome wanted to focus on a more hopeful message, or perhaps they wanted to remove anything that sounded too much like advanced technology or extraterrestrial influence. The Ethiopian church, however, didn't care about the politics of the West. They stayed isolated in their mountain fortresses and kept the stories exactly as they were written. This includes the Book of Enoch, which is the centerpiece of their faith, but was considered too radical for the Roman canon. Enoch talks about the Watchers, beings who came from the sky and changed the course of human history. When you combine the stories of the Watchers with this newly discussed passage about the 12,068-year visitor, a pattern starts to emerge. It's not just a religious story. It looks more like a survival manual. The monks believe that we are currently living in the final years of the current cycle. They point to signs in the weather, the shifting of the stars, and even the behavior of animals as proof that the visitor is almost here. Everything we thought we knew about the timeline of our world might be completely wrong. It's one thing to read about a cosmic visitor in an old book, but it's another thing entirely when the very ground we walk on starts to back up those claims. Geologists and climate scientists have been puzzled for years by a period called the Younger Dryas. About 12,900 years ago, the Earth was coming out of the last ice age. Things were warming up and life was thriving. Then, literally overnight in geological terms, the temperature plummeted. It was a cold snap so violent that it wiped out the mammoths and the giant ground sloths in the Americas. This period lasted for about 1,200 years. And then, just as suddenly as it started, it ended. This is the exact time frame mentioned in the hidden passages of the Ethiopian Bible. When the text speaks of a cosmic visitor every 12,068 years, it aligns almost perfectly with the start of these massive global shifts. Scientists are now finding nanodiamonds and melted glass in the soil layers from that time. This kind of material only forms under extreme heat and pressure, like a massive explosion in the atmosphere or a direct hit from a cosmic object. The crazy part is that these events aren't one-offs. When researchers dig deeper into the ice cores of Greenland and the sediment at the bottom of the ocean, they see these spikes of destruction happening in cycles. We are talking about events that are spaced out by roughly 12,000 years. This is known as a cataclysmic cycle. It is hands down one of the most debated topics in science today because if these cycles are real, we are technically overdue for the next one. What most people don't realize is how much of our history is missing. We find ruins of advanced civilizations like Göbekli Tepe in Turkey that date back to exactly the time of the last reset. It's like humanity gets to a certain point of intelligence and technology, and then the visitor arrives, the lightless chariot passes over, and we are forced to start all over again from the Stone Age. The Ethiopian Bible might be the only surviving record that actually tells us why this happens. Some researchers think the visitor isn't a ship at all, but a dark star or a massive comet trail that our solar system passes through. But the description of a chariot implies intent. It implies that something is watching the clock. In the Ethiopian text, the arrival of the visitor is linked to the purification of the earth. It's not just random rocks falling from the sky. It's a scheduled event meant to change the direction of life on this planet. The precision of the 12,068-year number is what keeps people up at night. We have to wonder if the people who wrote these texts had access to a level of astronomy that we are only just rediscovering today. How the giants were actually created. The Book of Enoch is perhaps the most controversial book in religious history, and it is a core part of the Ethiopian Bible. It tells the story of 200 beings known as the Watchers who descended onto Mount Hermon. They weren't just spirits, they had physical bodies, and they brought with them knowledge that humans weren't supposed to have. They taught us about the stars, how to make weapons of war, and even how to change our appearance with jewelry and makeup. In the context of the cosmic visitor, many believe the Watchers were the scouts for the lightless chariot. They were the ones who prepared the earth for the arrival of the higher powers. According to the text, these beings lived for hundreds of years and created a race of giants known as the Nephilim. These giants were so massive and so destructive that they nearly wiped out all of humanity. This is when the cycle of destruction usually kicks in. The Bible says the Great Flood was sent to clean up the mess made by the Watchers. If you look at the dates, the Great Flood is often placed right around that 12,000-year mark. It's the same story told in different ways. Whether it's a flood, a fire from the sky, or a sudden ice age, the result is the same. The old world is destroyed so a new one can begin. The Ethiopian Bible is unique because it doesn't just say God was angry. It gives a detailed account of the cosmic politics involved. It paints a picture of a universe that is busy and full of other beings who have a stake in what happens on Earth. The technology described in these books is mind-blowing for something written thousands of years ago. Enoch is taken into the sky in a whirlwind and sees the Earth from above. He describes the portals where the stars come out and the way the sun moves through different gates. This sounds a lot like someone trying to explain orbital mechanics using ancient words. If a cosmic visitor is coming every 12,000 years, it makes sense that they would leave behind some kind of observers to monitor our progress. Yeah, about that. If the Watchers were real and they were part of this cosmic cycle, it means the lightless chariot is more than just a myth. It is a transport. And if the cycle is 12,068 years, then the beings who left us long ago are on their way back. The monks who guard these books today say that we are in the time of the Great Revealing. They believe that the veils between our world and the cosmic world are thinning. But here's the deal. If they are coming back, are they coming to help us or to reset us once again? Protecting the covenant in the mountains. In a remote monastery in the Tigray region of Ethiopia, there are books that shouldn't exist. These are the Garima Gospels. For a long time, experts thought they were from the 11th century. But carbon dating proved they were actually made between the years 330 and 650. This makes them the oldest illustrated Christian books in the world. But it's not just the age that matters. It's what is drawn inside them. The illustrations show strange celestial events and beings that don't look like the traditional angels we see in European art. Some researchers have found what look like astronomical maps hidden within the patterns of the pages. These maps point to specific areas of the sky where the cosmic visitor is said to originate. The monks who live there spend their entire lives memorizing these texts and the oral traditions that go with them. They claim that the most important parts of the prophecy are never written down, but are passed from one guardian to the next. Ethiopia has always been a place of deep secrets. They claim to have the Ark of the Covenant, the most powerful object mentioned in the Bible, hidden in a small chapel in Aksum. No one is allowed to see it except for one monk who stays with it until he passes away. The connection between the Ark, the ancient Bible, and the cosmic visitor is something that many treasure hunters and historians have tried to solve for decades. Some believe the Ark is actually a communication device meant to signal the lightless chariot when humanity has reached a certain level of chaos. The Ethiopian calendar itself is a mystery. It is 7 to 8 years behind the Gregorian calendar used in the United States. It has 13 months with 12 months of 30 days and one short month of 5 or 6 days. This calendar isn't just for keeping track of holidays. It is built around the cycles of the heavens. When the Ethiopian Bible mentions 12,068 years, it is using a system of time that we don't fully understand. It's not that simple, though. Keeping these secrets has come at a high price. The monasteries are built on top of sheer cliffs that require a dangerous climb to reach. The monks have fought off invaders for centuries to keep these books from being destroyed or stolen. They know that if the information about the cosmic visitor were to be misused, it could cause mass panic. But they also believe that the world needs to know the truth before the cycle completes. The crazy part is that modern satellite imagery has started to find evidence of ancient structures buried deep under the Ethiopian soil that match the descriptions in the hidden passages. The message to the modern world. We are currently living in a window of time that many ancient cultures, from the high plateaus of Ethiopia to the jungles of the Yucatan, identified as the terminal point of a great age. It is a moment characterized by a strange, collective sense of anticipation, a vibrating, low-frequency feeling that the old ways of the world are fraying at the seams. While modern history tends to view time as a linear progression, a straight line of constant technological and social advancement, the ancients viewed it as a circle. They understood that the universe breathes in cycles. If we follow their breath, we are currently exhaling the final ragged breaths of a 12,000-year epic. The number 12,068 years keeps appearing in different forms across the globe, acting like a recurring mathematical ghost in our historical records. It is the common denominator in a series of seemingly unrelated cultural equations. Whether it's the Mayan long count, the staggering multimillennial duration of the Hindu yugas, or the Egyptian concept of Zep-Tepi, the first time, the timeline always seems to converge on our current era. It is as if various civilizations, separated by vast oceans and thousands of years, were all looking at the same cosmic clock and reaching the same terrifying conclusion. The battery is running low, and a recharge is imminent. But of all the ancient archives, the Ethiopian Bible, one of the oldest and most complete collections of scripture on earth, provides the most chillingly specific detail. Hidden within its pages is the account of the lightless chariot. To a modern reader, this might sound like a poetic metaphor for spiritual transformation, but the text treats it with the cold objectivity of a weather report. It isn't described as a mere change in heart, it is described as a physical, celestial phenomenon. The text tells us that the sky will change, the stars will appear to move out of their places, and a thick, impenetrable darkness will blanket the world for several days. This isn't the darkness of a long night. It is the darkness of a world where the very laws of physics seem to buckle under the weight of a passing cosmic force. When you strip away the religious language and the archaic terminology, what we are looking at is a cosmic event of staggering proportions. We are talking about a visitor to our solar system. This could be a crustal pole shift, a massive solar micronova, or the arrival of a massive celestial body, what some astronomers might call a brown dwarf or a rogue planet. If the hidden passages in these ancient manuscripts are correct, this visitor is a sentinel. Its arrival isn't an accident or a random collision of celestial debris. It is a scheduled appointment. It marks the precise moment when the Earth's energy is reset, much like a capacitor discharging its built-up tension after reaching a critical limit. The warning in the magnetics. To the skeptic, this sounds like the plot of a high-budget science fiction movie, a 2012 reboot for a new decade. But when you look at the empirical data regarding the Earth's magnetic field right now, the fiction starts to look like a forecast. The magnetic field, our planet's primary defense against the sun, is currently weakening at an accelerating rate. Since the mid-1800s, we have lost roughly 10% to 15% of its strength, and that rate is picking up speed. We are losing our shield against cosmic radiation. Simultaneously, the magnetic poles are migrating faster than they have in recorded history. The North Pole is shifting from the Canadian Arctic toward Siberia at a pace that has forced the aviation industry to constantly update its navigational charts. This is exactly what the ancient texts said would happen. A destabilization of the foundations of the world, a wobbling of the pillars before the visitor appears. What most people don't realize is that these cycles aren't necessarily about the end of the world in a final, apocalyptic sense. They are about the end of an era. We have been taught to believe that our ancestors were primitive hunter-gatherers who spent their lives shivering in caves. But the evidence left in the earth suggests a far more complex story. The survivors of the last cycle, the ones who lived through the cataclysms of 12,000 years ago, were the architects of the impossible. They were the ones who built the Giza pyramids, Göbekli Tepe, and the massive megalithic structures in Peru that we still can't explain with modern engineering. They didn't build these structures out of vanity or for the glorification of a single pharaoh. They were trying to leave a message for us, a time capsule written in the hardest stone available. They knew that human memory is short, that ink fades, and that oral traditions eventually turn into fairy tales. But stone survives. By aligning their monuments to specific constellations, they were warning us to watch the stars and, more importantly, to keep track of the time. The Ethiopian Bible is essentially the written version of that stone-cold message. It tells us that we are not isolated or alone in a vacuum. We are part of a much larger and often dangerous cosmic neighborhood. The universe has a rhythm, and that rhythm includes periodic house cleaning. We have a choice in how we process this information. We can look at these ancient books as just old stories, the fever dreams of desert nomads who were afraid of the dark. Or we can see them as a legitimate high-level warning from a precursor civilization that may have known significantly more about the mechanics of our solar system than we do. The data from the soil, the ice cores, and the stars all point to the same conclusion. Geologists see the evidence of sudden climate shifts and black mat layers, soot and charcoal deposits, in the Earth that date back precisely to the last 12,000-year cycle. There is a key detail we often miss in our modern interpretation of judgment. The Ethiopian monks who have guarded these texts for centuries in monasteries carved into the sides of cliffs suggest that the visitor isn't coming to destroy us out of malice. Instead, the arrival is an audit. The Watchers, beings described in the Book of Enoch in the Ethiopian Garima Gospels, supposedly gave humanity the seeds of civilization, technology, agriculture, and the arts of war and peace. The visitor returns at the end of the cycle to see what we have done with that gift. It's a cosmic progress report. Have we become a civilization that has learned to live in harmony with the planet and each other? Or are we still the same violent, fragmented species that needed to be reset during the Younger Dryas? The answer to that question might determine our survival. Think of the Earth's magnetic field as a hard drive for human consciousness. If the field collapses or flips, it acts as the ultimate delete key. It wipes the slate clean for a civilization that has lost its way, leaving only the ruins and the myths for the next group to find. The physics of the shift. If we look at the physics of a pole shift, it becomes clear why the ancients were so obsessed with the foundations of the deep. As the magnetic field weakens, the core of the Earth undergoes changes in its rotation and heat distribution that are far more than mere shifts in orientation. This isn't just a change in where a compass points. It's a fundamental alteration in the physical balance of the planet itself. The Earth's magnetic field acts as a sort of invisible glue, a locking mechanism that keeps the various layers of our world moving in relative harmony. When this field fails or reaches a critical point of instability, the lithosphere, the Earth's rigid outer crust, can slide over the viscous mantle beneath it. Imagine a spinning orange where the skin suddenly slips and moves independently of the fruit inside. That is a crustal displacement, a phenomenon that transforms the very map of our reality in a geological heartbeat. In a matter of days, or even hours, the North Pole could end up in the mid-Atlantic, dragging the entire surface of the world with it into new and unfamiliar latitudes. The consequences of such a slip are beyond the scale of modern imagination. The oceans, governed by the laws of momentum and inertia, would not simply move with the land. Instead, they would continue their previous trajectory while the ground beneath them shifted. This would result in water washing over the continents in miles-high tsunamis, scouring the Earth of its cities, its forests, and its history. This is the flood that exists in the mythology of every single culture on the planet, from the high peaks of the Andes to the deserts of Mesopotamia. It wasn't a local event triggered by heavy rain. It was a planetary reset, a physical, inevitable consequence of the Earth's mechanics losing their grip. When we read the ancient accounts of the world being turned upside down, we are not reading metaphor. we are reading a literal eyewitness account of a planet in tectonic revolt. The lightless chariot described in the Ethiopian texts might be the very trigger for this catastrophic sequence. Whether it represents a massive plasma discharge from the sun, known as a micronova, or the gravitational pull of a passing celestial body, it acts as the spark that ignites the planetary engine. The thick darkness mentioned in these ancient records would be the direct result of a massive atmospheric upheaval. As the Earth's crust grinds into its new position, the friction generates heat and pressure that trigger every fault line and volcano on the globe. The air would become a choking slurry of volcanic ash, dust, and ionized gases, effectively blotting out the sun for months or years. This is the long night of the ancestors, a period where the sky itself seemed to fall and the stars moved in chaotic patterns across the firmament. We are standing on the edge of a discovery that could change everything we know about religion, science, and our place in the universe. If the 12,068-year cycle is real, and the evidence for it is mounting in every field of study, from ice core samples to the alignment of megalithic structures, then we are the generation that gets to witness the turning of the page. This isn't just about survival or the continuation of a species, it's about a fundamental shift in what it means to be human. For too long, we have viewed history as a linear progression of progress. But the physics of the pole shift suggests history is actually a spiral, returning us to the same points of crisis and transformation time and time again. The convergence of these timelines suggests that our current global instability might not be purely political, economic, or social. The rising anger, the widespread mental health crises, and the pervasive sense of impending doom that many feel across different cultures may be symptoms of a much larger environmental and cosmic shift. As the magnetic shield continues to drop, our brains, which contain magnetite and are inherently sensitive to magnetic frequencies, may be reacting to the change. We are literally being unplugged from the old grid. The frequencies that once anchored our consciousness and our biological rhythms are fluctuating, leading to a state of collective disorientation. It is as if the software of human society is glitching because the hardware of the planet is being overhauled. The ancients didn't leave these warnings to scare us, they left them to prepare us. They were masters of observation who understood that the sky and the earth are a single interconnected system. They wanted us to be the generation that finally breaks the cycle of catastrophe and amnesia. For thousands of years, humanity has built up great civilizations, reached the heights of technological or spiritual mastery, only to have them wiped out and forgotten in the blink of a cosmic eye. This leaves the survivors to start over with nothing but sticks and stones, eventually turning the memories of their advanced ancestors into gods and legends. By looking back at the Ethiopian Bible, the Adam and Eve story, and the megaliths that were built to withstand the very tsunamis we now fear, we might finally find the roadmap we need to navigate the future. These stones and texts are not just relics. They are survival manuals written in the language of mathematics and myth. The darkness is coming, but in the ancient view, darkness is not the end, it is the womb. It is the space where the new world is formed and where the old world is composted to provide life for what comes next. The lightless chariot is on its way, moving through the deep reaches of space or the hidden cycles of our sun, and when it arrives, the superficialities of our modern life will vanish. It won't matter what we believed, what our bank accounts looked like, or what side of a border we lived on. Borders will be erased by the shifting of the plates, and wealth will be redefined by the ability to endure and remember. It will only matter who we have become in the face of the shift, and whether we have the clarity to hold on to our humanity when the foundations move. The clock is ticking and the cycle is nearing its inevitable end. Whether you choose to trust the ancient monks who preserved these secrets or the modern satellite data that confirms the weakening of our magnetic shield, the message is identical. The foundations are moving. It's time to wake up and see the world for what it truly is. A beautiful, fragile, and volatile vessel navigating a cosmic cycle far greater than ourselves. Could a forgotten book really hold the key to our survival, or are we just seeing patterns in the dark? What do you think the lightless chariot actually is? And are you ready for what comes next? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. And don't forget to like and subscribe for more deep dives into the world's greatest mysteries.